the administration is getting to work, and as you saw, was very prepared on what to do on day one. And I think I just came from a meeting with our legal team in D.C., going through those executive orders as they are, as we see lawsuits already begin to be filed against the Trump administration. One on DOGE. We're seeing others talked about on birthright citizenship and definitions there. We'll talk through it on the show, but we've already identified, I think, 15 to 16 that are likely going to have lawsuits filed, and that we are ready to defend along with the Trump administration.
And as you have said, since the time of the election, that as soon as there's a new administration, our work in some degree ramps up very aggressively, because these groups, these outside groups, will start attacking the very policies that President Trump was elected to enact. And through these executive actions, they are being challenged already. One is being challenged, the Department of Government Efficiency. And then we also see states getting ready to take action against the birthright citizenship, narrowing of that definition that was put out in an order yesterday. And this is just the beginning. We know that those are the ones that were ready to file at 12:02, if you will, yesterday, or right after things were signed. But these will continue to mount, and we want to make sure that the government can do its job and the new administration can do its job. Therefore, we will be ready to engage these lawsuits as well. And I know you've been meeting with our folks in D.C. and our team there, already strategizing our first moves against these lawsuits.
We see the lawsuits that are already being filed, one on DOGE. There will certainly be lawsuits filed on civil servant reform. We talked about what draining the swamp means. Draining the swamp really means how do you get rid of these bad actors in the bureaucracy if they're constantly thwarting the president's directives, which are then carried out by these departments. So they are a problem person. They are willfully ignoring the advice, the job that they are instructions that they are given by their directors, who are political appointees. And in some cases, not only do they ignore, they actually do the opposite, or try and slow walk things, or just cause things to be difficult. That someone like that can be removed, or and at least put into a different position, if not completely removed from the federal government. So this is learning, I think the Trump team learning from those first 4 years, really, how do you get to those problem people? And what's the best way to drain the swamp?
As I look at these executive actions that were taken yesterday, I kind of put them in two categories. You have a lot on the border, in securing the border, which is clearly a mandate of the American people, and then draining the swamp, getting rid of the deep state, whether it be the executive order on ending censorship or the ones that are more directed towards the hiring practices, the merit-based system, telling people they have to come back to work. And those are all things that both sides, both the border and the draining the swamp category, I think will get a flurry of lawsuits, as we're already seeing. And while the one on DOGE that was filed minutes after Trump was sworn into office, it's trying to focus in on a 1972 law, and it's filed by a group called National Security Counselors. And what they're saying is that DOGE meets the requirements to be considered a federal advisory committee, which is a legal entity regulated to ensure the government receives transparent and balanced advice. And they are required to have fairly balanced representation, keep minutes of meetings, allow the public to attend, file a charter with Congress, and more, which they're alleging in this lawsuit that DOGE hasn't done. I feel like this one could have been a premature lawsuit, and that's why we want to get in on it early, because you look at this and they're making these assumptions. However, DOGE is just an idea until the president becomes president. Yet they file the lawsuit minutes after he takes office. he can't establish something before he's president. He can't do all these necessary requirements before he's president. So they're making the assumption that it won't be under that class of a legal entity, a federal advisory committee. Maybe it will. They're also telegraphing maybe things that they could get around this. But I feel like this lawsuit is one that we need to get on early because it could be a pretty quick win, whereas some of the others, the deep state is going to fight hard about going back into the office, being able to be fired. Those lawsuits are coming too, but you can't just let one slip away in these early stages, and that's what we're prepared to do.
It's so Washington, D.C. that this is the complaint, if I can just get it out. So it says that the panel is breaking a 1972 law that requires advisory committees to the executive branch to follow certain rules on disclosure, hiring, and other practices. Like you said, Will, we're not at that point yet of DOGE. For what I know, Elon Musk has not been paid anything. They might have people who have been working on the outside during a transition that was being paid for not by the federal government, by the way, but by, again, is something that you can, it's a mix of dollars and that every incoming administration can receive. And there may have been teams that were working on, okay, what is this going to look like? Is this going to be something outside or inside the government? I think we're still waiting to get the exact answers on it. But the lawsuit's saying is you can't have it because of they want the disclosure, they want the hiring, they want it all to be basically available by FOIA. I'm not saying ultimately it wouldn't be, but usually commissions within the White House and work that is inside the White House is not subject to FOIA. So while they're talking about the record keeping, if this is an advisory committee, depending on what level it is, to the President of the United States, the FOIA angle is very difficult for these legal organizations who, again, are just trying to make trouble. I even believe there's going to be lawsuits on sending military to the border. Though the president certainly has, I think, the power, especially if the states concede. So I think most of those states will, some might not. That's not as big of an issue, but you could see a California or some others on the left trying to say, well, you're trying to put, federal martial law on our states' borders. But in fact, our borders are not controlled and governed by states or state laws. They are governed by the federal government. It's Article 1 of the Constitution. And this is, again, a role outside of the states. But even that idea of let's send some military, get some plans there so that the fentanyl stops and the human trafficking stops. And you see these kind of dual tracks of a government that works for its people. And how does it work for its people? One, it's by getting inflation under control, getting the economy back on track. And then second is protecting the American people from the porous border, which is killing Americans with fentanyl, which is making us a leader in sex trafficking around the world. These are not issues where we want to be number one in, and it is why the ACLJ this morning on, we're ready to fight, and we already are.